Literature is where I go to explore the highest and lowest places in human society and in the human spirit, where I hope to found not absolute truth, but the truth of the tale, of the imagination, and of the heart by Salman Rushdie. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Tanya Saluja, and I'm your host for this very interesting booking reading session. And with us, before we go ahead, I just want to introduce you with our author Madhavi Mahadevan. So, Madhavi Mahadevan is an award winning author. And before we give the formal introduction of ma'am, I just wanted to introduce what we are exactly going to do today and how it all started a short journey of this. Within every writer, there lies great potential to shape and mold the thoughts of others. Using their words, writers can get inside your head, make you see the world as they would like to. Each word reflects brilliance, passion, and has in the potential to move the world. Indian women authors have given a new dimension to Indian literature. After very successful first and second editions, which saw more than 1,800 entries across five award categories, immersive multi city book reading sessions, and more than 30 eminent personalities getting associated in the award journey, JK Paper and the Times of India proudly present the third edition of Author Awards. Author Awards is a platform to encourage women authors express their creativity and fondness for writing. It's a celebration of the art of storytelling from a women perspective. This initiative, which is to acknowledge exemplary pieces of writing by women authors so that it inspires more women to take up writing, pen that first story, and feel proud of their accomplishment. In celebration of writing of women authors, we bring you one of your favorite women author over an immersive book reading session, one and only Madhavi Mahadevan. Madhavi Mahadevan, once again, I just wanted to tell you that she is an award-winning author. Her debut novel, The Contheus, is a retelling of Mahabharata from the perspective of Kunti. We all are aware from Mahabharata and Kunti. And also her latest book title, The Bride of the Forest, won her the title of last year's Author Award in the fiction category. A warm welcome to you, Madhavi. So, how does it
Thank you.
feel? Thank you so much. So, first of all, I just wanted to thank you for joining us and for giving your precious time today. And also, let's begin with the first thing which I was just getting in my mind because I can relate to it and I'm very curious to ask this question. So, how does it feel to have been recognized for your exceptional work on a platform created for women authors?
Thank you, Tanya. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, then it's wonderful to be here and to be in conversation with you. And thank you for such a warm introduction. How does it feel to be recognized? This is I'll be completely honest with you. Um, this It's been a very strange feeling because it has been a mix of so many emotions. Firstly, there was a little bit of unreality when I heard that I had got the award. And this was partly due to the fact, I think now, that there was a pandemic on at that time. There still is, but it was probably the worst phase. And since we were in lockdown, I had not seen my book being launched, nor had there been any visits to bookstores so that I could have seen the book. So the book seemed to exist in some virtual world, and I didn't understand that there were probably even readers for it. So the news of the award felt very unreal. Again, a part of this unreality is due to the fact that writers are essentially solitary creatures, and recognition when it comes is something I personally am very uncomfortable with, to some extent, a little bit shy of. But in this case, it was welcome because there was a whole team of people around with me. There was my agent, there was my publisher, so I felt that this was something to be happy about. The biggest happiness, the biggest joy came from the nature of the award itself. The fact that this is an award that applauds women writing in India. Today, for the longest time, we had very few women writers. It was almost as if their voices were not being heard. But the scene is so different. It is so rich and vibrant today. There are so many wonderful writers out there. And to be a part of this landscape is, of course, both humbling and encouraging.
Thank you so much. That was great. Like, yeah, the points which you told us, that was true. Even the pandemic, that was a very like changing situation for everyone. But yes, the one who still has the courage like you will win the situation just like you.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Madhvi, thank you so much. So, just going ahead, your book has garnered rave reviews all across different platforms. But I would still request you to tell us about your story, The Bride of the Forest, one of my favorite, and what inspired you to write this book, because we must know the inspiration behind this wonderful book.
The inspiration behind the book, it's to break it down completely. This inspiration has two aspects to it. One was the fact that the story itself, the theme of the story, the fact that it exists in the Mahabharata was drew me to it. It is, I must tell you that it is a very old story. When and it's You can say that it exists somewhere in the backwaters of the Mahabharata, and in terms of chronology of events, it is many generations before the war took place. So this was very interesting to me for two reasons. One is that it is a tale of surrogacy. Now, surrogacy tales are plentiful in the epics, especially in Mahabharata. There are many cases of surrogacy. What separated this one from all other stories was the fact that this was an example of commercial surrogacy. Commercial surrogacy, probably the only example of commercial surrogacy that exists in the epics. So today, as we know, commercial surrogacy is a thriving trade. And India is one of the countries that is at the center of this trade. So the fact that this very ancient tale could have a resonance in modern times, have echoes in modern times, was one of the reasons why I was inspired to look at this tale closely. The second was again, a bridge between the past and the present. This bridge was the aspect of women's empowerment. Today we talk a lot about it, and it's almost like, how are we looking for strategies to empower women? But though the story of Drishadvati, the heroine of Bride of the Forest, is a tale of women's exploitation, it is also a story of a woman finding agency for herself and making that journey on her own to freedom. So I felt that at a time when we are considering all these aspects of enabling women to become stronger, to take charge of their lives, this story again had a relevance. So these were the two inspirations for the story.
I must say that was truly inspirational, and especially the topic which you raised and which you inspired, and maybe the like inspiration for everyone, the surrogacy. It is it is bringing a change in the culture as well. Not in
Yeah,
India, in the world, but yes,
yeah,
most common in India.
yeah.
So also tell us, Madhvi, while there are thousands of books on Indian mythology, your book is quite different and on a character untouched, rather unheard also. In all the stories, most of us have grown up listening. So, what really was the thought behind writing it? And also, how have you managed to bring life such a strong and bold mythical character, which is Drishadvati?
That's a yeah, that's an interesting question because the story of Drishadvati. She's also known by the name Madhavi. By the way, I must tell you that. So the story of Drishadvati is a seemingly minor story. The whole incident is a minor one, and but the fact that it is in the epic and made it worth examining for me, because I feel every story in the Mahabharata has some purpose. There is something in the story which has kept it alive for thousands of years. So, to answer your question about how does one, bring to life that world which existed thousands of years ago, I had to look at the cultural context of the in which a story like this could have risen. Who were the characters in the story, aside from Drishadvati, because she hardly speaks. Maybe I think twice in the original story in the Mahabharata, she speaks barely twice, and both times it is significant, but she is an important character because of her connections. Firstly, she is the daughter of Yayati, who is a very important king in the epic, and much has been written about him even by other creative writers, dramatists, and story fiction writers, and so on. So Yayati, being Yayati's daughter, what would her life have been like in her world? To understand that world, I had to look at it through the prism of rights, duties, obligations, the value system of that time, which forced people to behave in certain ways. How much of free will did they really have at that time? Well, once I understood that what what this world was all about, and how much agency did each individual have, whether he was a king, whether he was a Brahmin scholar, whether it was a woman. Once I understood these aspects of agency, it then became easier for me to create these characters, to get into their heads, and in a sense Drishadvati's own role became understandable. Till then it had been a very strange story, but once I understood the cultural context, the story began to make sense, and all the characters, Drishadvati and everybody else, just sprang to life on their own.
It's good to know that. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Also, Madhvi, since you have shared this with us, so can I request you to read a short excerpt from the book introducing the character Drishadvati?
Yeah, I'll be very happy to do that. The excerpt where, see, Drishadvati comes in glimpses. You see her walking out of the forest with her mother in, say, the opening paragraph, but then you don't see her for a while because other things are happening. Finally, the passage which I have chosen to read out, which I would like to read out, is where Drishadvati has been left by her mother in the palace of her father, King Yayati, whom she has never met in her life before. She has no idea who he is, what is life in the palace all about, who is the queen, none of these things. So now the father is meeting the daughter for the first time. He has no clue what to do with her. He takes her to his chief queen, Devyani, and there is a story behind the relationship of Devyani and Yayati, which is again a well-known story in the Mahabharata, and this relationship has got adversarial overtones. They're not a very friendly couple. So what does Drishadvati feel is when she meets them is probably a very good place to introduce her as a character. Now she is being presented to the queen, and this is the passage. It begins. On the night we first met, after looking me over, Devyani says to the king, "So, this one too is your love child?" Her tone drips honey. Her eyes are gleaming dagger points. "Are there any more waiting to crawl out of the forest?" she asks. He starts to protest, but changing his mind, merely says no. She gives him a long, hard glare. Then, abruptly turning her attention to me again, asks, "Who are your parents?" "Don't know." "Who is your mother?" "Don't know." She sends him a mocking look sideways. "Where have you picked her from? Does this creature even have a name?" She turns to me. "What are you called?" "Drishadvati." "Madhavi," cuts in loudly. "Her name is Madhavi. It is a fitting name for a Raj Kanya. It means richness and good luck." "Really?" The queen's voice is cold and disbelieving. She looks at me through narrowed eyes and says, "It's clear that she has had no upbringing, royal or otherwise. No one has taught her how to speak to her elders." Glancing at the king, she adds flatly, "I don't want her." "At least give her a chance," he says. His tone is half humoring, half pleading. "You used to say that after two boys, you would like to have a little princess of your own. And you always give me what I want, don't you?" Are they always like this? She's stern and he wary. They don't seem to like each other. Are they enemies? I watch them slowly circling each other, creating ripples of tension that spread through the web so that its very air trembles. I cannot decide who I dislike more in this odd pair.
Amazing. The story about surrogacy, or as described in so many reviews, a womb on rent. A story of a girl whose fertility was like battered repeatedly in exchange for priceless horses is so intriguing. Personally, it is very intriguing, and at the same time, you feel the character's pain, the pain you raise here. At the same time, we can feel her pain, anger, and sufferings. It's just so beautifully portrayed in your book, and it's like you have lived through it all with her. Even the emotions, I can connect with her, the language, and the emotions you have put while writing it, it's so like impressive. We can feel the pain, we can feel the situation. It's like we are there in the past and we are living her life currently. So how do you manage to put so much life into your book and the characters? Also, if you don't
Yes.
mind, can I request you to read an excerpt from the book of one or two of your favorite characters as well after it? Because it is giving me a pleasure to listening to you.
Thank you. Thank you. To answer your question about how does one bring the characters to life, or how did one bring these characters to life? See, this is a normal process for anybody who is trying to write fiction, because fiction is always about characters. It starts with characters. Initially, these characters live in your head much before you pick up the pen or start you know uh, writing. They are passive, but slowly, as you think more about them, their situation, their condition, they start you know developing flesh. It's like bare skeletons. In this particular case too, I had the bare skeleton of the story. I knew what the story was, but I had no insight into the characters. So thinking about it, reading about it, looking, researching deeper about it, allowed me to flesh these characters out in a way that they normally started coming to life. As you said, pain, rage, suffering, compulsions, frustration, these are the emotions which are the strongest in the story, to even which you have also reacted to. Now, these are emotions, are universal emotions. All of us have felt pain, rage, and have felt that we are suffering, have felt the injustice of things that is going on right now or ever in the past. And tapping into these emotions is very easy if you have experienced something like it yourself. My job as an author was only what every author's job is, to give space and voice to these characters. In doing so, I can connect both myself as well as the reader to the character. And once that is done, that once that connection is made, the character develops his or her own life. So that is how I could bring life into the characters. Now, yeah, you wanted me to do a reading again. This with
Yes,
about yeah with my favorite characters. Well,
of
obviously,
course.
since this is a story of Drishadvati, she is my absolute favorite as a character. I mean, while I was writing and living with her, I just grew to love her, and it was very easy to connect with her emotions. Um, one of this, one of the things about this particular story has been that it is portrayed sometimes as a love story, but I didn't. The love angle is between Drishadvati and the man who eventually barters her 4 times. That is Galav, the Brahmin scholar. Now, Galav is in a very peculiar predicament in that he has to obtain 800 of the rarest horses to give as Guru Dakshina to his Guru. It's difficult for him to do this, and he appeals to Yayati, that is, who is the king. And Yayati has an obligation to satisfy the Brahmin's request. But he doesn't have the means. He doesn't have those horses. So what he does is he gives Galav his daughter and says, "Take her. She's going to be the mother of great kings." This is what the prediction about her is. So take her to a king who is in dire need of an heir, and in exchange for the horses, let her be the king's wife. Let so that she will give birth to an heir. Now Galav has no choice. He says, "I have to get those horses anyhow." And the first king he approaches is a very rich king, the king of Ayodhya, whose name is Haryashva. Haryashva has a problem with this idea because he doesn't have 800 horses. So he comes up with a suggestion to Galav that leave her, I will not marry her, leave her with me for 1 year. 1 year is enough for me to get one heir. I only need one heir. I need one son, and she will give me that son. In exchange, you will get 200 horses from me. After that, you can take her away. So now Galav has to put this extremely disgusting and preposterous idea to Drishadvati, and he does so. This is her reaction to the idea. This is what she says: "I don't know what this means." She tapered off, looking deeply troubled. "I will be neither wife nor mother if they keep my child and send me away. Then what will I be?" Galav looked at her in silence, then looked away. "Isn't there some other way out?" she asked. "Surely there must be." "Like what?" His tone was brusque. "I don't know," she said uncertainly. "Are you prepared to go wandering around the land, maybe for years, searching for these Shamkarni horses till you get your 800? "Do I have another option?" he asked. "Why can't you go back to your guru and tell him the truth?" He stared at her in horror. "What truth? That I have failed? That Aryavat does not have 800 white horses? How do you know that? There are so many kingdoms. Do you know what is going on in each one of those kingdoms?" She flinched at his outburst. "Don't snap at me. I'm trying to help you. Do you think it would make a difference if I met your guru? Take me to your guru, Muni Kumar Galav. I want to meet him." "Why? What business do you have with him?" "None. I have nothing to do with Haryashva either, or with this disgusting proposition he has put before you." Her voice rose in a plaintive cry as, despite herself, she beggared herself before him. "I do not want to be parceled out between different men, Muni Kumar. My father gave me to you, but he at least did what was within his rights. What right do you have to pawn me repeatedly? You will gather your precious horses, but what about me? What will I become?" That's it.
That was just so amazing. And even it is more amazing, it is coming from you itself. It's so great that the book, which I was reading from the last few days, and I'm just hearing it from yourself, from the author itself. So, thank you so much, first of all, for reading it for me and for all the viewers. So, that was just, so amazing. And the best thing about this mythological fiction tale is that women are more than daughters, wives, and mothers. They are the one who create this world. They are the one who can destroy this world as well. They are so powerful. They are
Hmm.
their own beings, and you have given more than just a voice to your central character, which is Drishadvati,
Hmm.
are everyone's favorite character. In fact, all the characters are so fascinating. But yes, this must have taken years of research. So I just wanted to know because I'm very curious at this point of time. So tell us about the kind of research you have did to build all the characters in your book before, like, you were going to write them. You were going to portray them, I would just say more precisely.
Uh, yeah. See, yes, it is a fact that a certain amount of research is needed. I have written other fiction in the past. When you're looking at the environment of any story, with which you are not completely familiar, you have to do research, as you say, and you have to look into the background of the characters, because characters actually spring from their environment. So, this story of Drishadvati, the story which is in Bride of the Forest, emerges out of a very complex ecosystem. Very complex because it is so old, it is so far back in the past that any person with a modern sensibility, like me, like you, like the readers, anyone anywhere today, any person living today, won't be able to easily connect with that world. So, understanding this ecosystem, the web of relationships, the obligations between, the right, what was considered righteous behavior, what was unrighteous behavior, what was the idea of dharma, which prevailed in society at that time, how did it apply to individuals, how did it apply to a king, how did it apply to a Brahmin scholar, a student? How did it apply to a woman? All this had to be sort of probed and understood. Fortunately, we do have the Mahabharata. We have it in many different versions, and there are excellent retellings also out there. There's a lot of scholarship. So my first point was to start looking at the Mahabharata, different versions of the Mahabharata, different retellings of the Mahabharata, and trying to understand the complexity of that particular ecosystem. Then there are also lots of scholarly articles which look at the history of ancient, look at ancient times from a very historical, social, cultural point of view, which gave me an idea of how people thought and behaved in those times. What were the strictures that were placed on them? Then there was also the status of women, because we're discussing exploitation of women in this story. So that's one of the themes. So what was the status of women in an ancient world? Was it, how much freedom, how much agency did they have in their life? They were women just like us, the same emotions, the same feelings, but the conditions in which they lived were very different. And how did they, what was it all about? How did they survive? How did they transcend? What were the strategies that they used? This, for this too, I had to read up enough material. There is enough out there, thankfully. Then it came down to the issue of surrogacy. Now we know what surrogacy was in ancient times and what it is today. Today there is a lot of medical intervention. You have IVF and all sorts of other medical techniques, and it's very easy to have to become a surrogate mother today. And it's not, the people do it, they do it. Commercial surrogacy thrives because of these techniques. But aside from this, what is the psychological cost that a woman pays, for in this process? She gets some money, maybe she, like Drishadvati, in Drishadvati's case, she didn't have a choice, she had to undergo this. And but there was a psychological cost, there is a psychological cost, because motherhood does not begin just with the birth of the baby, it begins much earlier. And it and if you do not get to keep your child, if you do, the child that you have, grown in your womb, there is some psychological impact which is not mentioned at all, because it is uncomfortable to talk about. So studying this, what could be the possible impact mentally, was very important. Finally, I have to say that anything that was tangentially connected with the story world, whether it is, what did a forest look like at that time, how did people talk to each other, in some mythological, old, ancient world, I had to get some sense of that to create the story world, which again involved a lot of reading, asking questions, and so on. So this was the level of research.
I think that was too much, and the research you did, that was amazing, and you did it so closely to make everything, in order to just make it everything to be right and to be very precise, and the one who reads it can connect it through the bottom of the heart. So that's what here it is all about, and that's why it is one of my favorite. So although everything in your book is your favorite, but can you just read of your absolute favorite parts of the book? It's a request from my end.
Um, you see, we were just talking about the creation of the story world, and how that happens, in the how that happens, the credibility of the story world. Now there were some characters that existed in the original, the little story which is to be found, but there were others whom I had to kind of invent. I had to flesh out all the characters, but there were others whom I had to invent. And while I was trying to imagine what life might have been like for Drishadvati, now I have to, the chapter which I am go the I'm just looking for that passage. Just give me a minute. Um, yeah, just one second.
Sure, no worries.
Thank you. Yeah, just 1 minute. Yeah. Now this is a scene which I imagined. We know from the original story that Drishadvati was very beautiful. Not only was she very beautiful, she had what was considered auspicious signs. Auspicious signs of a woman who is going to give birth to great kings. Apparently there was this list of auspicious signs which somebody like an astrologer could say, yes, these are the signs. If these signs are present on a woman's body, she is definitely going to be the mother of great kings, which was considered, the most fortunate thing for a woman in those days. So in the first place, that where Drishadvati is left, in Haryashva's court, Ayodhya, there is an astrologer who identifies these signs. And obviously, he has studied Drishadvati from top to toe, literally, and is able to say that, her fingernails are like this, her soles of her feet are like this. So he's done a very close scrutiny. It is a scene that subsequently follows, in which this man, approaches Drishadvati. He does it very quietly without the king's knowledge. And the reason why he approaches is that Drishadvati is in the palace for a purpose. She has to conceive within the span of 1 year and produce an heir. Now it's taking a little time. So this astrologer, the court astrologer, who's trusted by the king, approaches Drishadvati and tells her that, why don't we help the process along? I can be a substitute for the king, and nobody needs to know about it. So you can give birth to my child, who because you are going to give birth to a son, that is known. And Nobody will know about it. You just do what I have to tell you. Now, this is absolutely disgusting, to Drishadvati. Who is already in a very difficult predicament, and now there is this lecherous man approaching her. She doesn't. She has to fight him off. She has to him off. But how is she going to do it? He is a powerful man, and she can't say anything openly. So she comes up with a ploy because she is a child of the forest, and the forest has taught her some tricks. So, one of the tricks that she has learnt in the forest is to be able to mimic any forest sound. She can mimic a bird, she can mimic an animal, she can, even as in this case, a snake. So, now I will read a passage where she deals with this problem before her. I had to be able to breathe, to calm down in order to do what I wanted. It was the only way out. Willing myself to grow still, I waited. Slowly the energy uncoiled. It rose within me, dark, glistening, twisting, expanding, fanning out its head. An angry, attacking energy that made itself known to the world through sound. A warning, a hiss so real that I saw, as I had once before in the forest, the eyes, bright as black beads, staring fixedly at me. A faint rustle, like the shifting of dry leaves in an autumn breeze, emanating from my moving lips. The beastly man froze. I could feel fear dart through him. Did you hear? He asked quaveringly. Heard that sound? It comes for the milk, I whispered back and shifted my head towards the covered brass tumbler on the stool in the corner. Don't be afraid and don't move. Don't even bat an eyelid. What? What? A king cobra, I murmured. It's a sign of good luck, isn't it?
That's great. That was so incredible. You read it. Thank you so much, first of all. So, the way you have told the story of a character who has probably not been given a single mention in the numerous stories is just incredible. You
Thank
have
you.
just made us realize that Drishadvati is a character that should be remembered by all of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for writing those wonderful lines. Now, just moving slightly away from the book, I just wanted to ask one question from you. Like being a female writer, have you ever faced discrimination?
Uh, Discrimination. Um, we are talking about gender discrimination because you use the word female writer. So, yes, the impulse to write is gender neutral. A man can, feel that he must become a writer. He feels the urge, the burning passion to write, and so does a woman. So this impulse is gender neutral, but how it is treated by anyone who puts it in action in the larger world is different. When, say, for instance, a man gives up his job because he wants to become a writer, if he is financially comfortable, he can very easily do it. There's no problem because time and space will be provided to him. He'll have a wife or a mother or staff that will ensure that his meals reach him on time, that his privacy is maintained. He wants to lock himself up in a study, he can do that. There's no problem with it. People, bills will get paid, and callers will be turned away, and everybody will be told, well, so and so is writing, he can't be disturbed. Now this is a luxury which men do get, and women, I have to say, or at least I have never really had this luxury. you know Probably it all the this is borne out by the fact also, to some extent, that there are, right from the beginning, male writers, whether they are poets or fiction writers, have outnumbered women because women have never had the time and space which is an absolute prerequisite if you want to become a writer. So this was the same problem which I had, and I would say that carving out time and space was a very difficult thing, because it meant that if I locked up my room and said, if I locked the door and said I want to be left alone for 2 hours, it struck people as odd. What is she doing inside that is taking so long? What has she, how much has she written, there'll be all kinds of questions. Then there was also the additional question of, education. You're an educated woman. Education is equal to employment, is equal to earning potential. So what are you wasting your education for? You have a solid education in science or whatever, and here you are sitting and trying to write stories. Writing fiction doesn't pay. Why are you wasting your time? Don't do it. Do it as a leisure activity if you want. But it was not a leisure activity for me. It was a serious preoccupation, which I felt I was constantly having to justify or explain, till I eventually had to stop doing it and say, just leave me alone. I want to write at this time. I'm not going to listen to anyone right now. So, like any form of gender discrimination, I think the discrimination which women writers face is, starts with the immediate circle. It is not so much from the outside society, but it is from your own family, who question your impulse to write. And awards like the author award are acknowledging the contribution of women writers, and this itself goes a long way in changing this scene. And I'm happy to say that it is changing now, but it was there when I started writing.
I should say that that was completely true, and I highly appreciate your candor here that you brought all these points without any like defamation, not the defamation, I should say, but without any buffering. So that was too true. That is the belief which society believes if someone, if specifically a woman wants to write. That's the belief I believe.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you so much, Madhvi. That was a great discussion with you. And now we would like to take one or two questions from the audience at this point. So, the first question which came to me was mythology something that you have always wanted to write about, or did something or someone in particular created that interest to write about mythology?
Um, when the thing was that mythology was not something that I wanted to write. Mythology is what we all grow up with in the, it's part of the environment. You hear these stories. It is not what I wanted to write about. I can honestly tell you that I had never imagined that I would be writing fiction based on mythology, because I thought everybody knows these stories. But it so happened that, when you hear these stories being told at home or watch them on television or whatever, um, that's a different mindset. When you start examining them, you realize that actually, in an epic like the Mahabharata or even in the Ramayana, these epics are living epics. They are influencing our lives even today. It's not that we are watching them on television and saying this is how the world was, so many centuries ago. It's a very different world today, and this is all fiction, this is all stories. No, the characters of these epics live on and on, and that is perhaps the beauty of mythology, that it finds relevance in every age. There is something about it which keeps it alive, and the connection alive. So I think the reason why I was drawn to it was because, one was that it is part of the landscape in which I grew in, and which every other Indian probably has grown in. We are all familiar with these stories. So if one wants to write, one is seeking connection. I felt mythology was the best way for me to connect with readers. I would be it would be an engagement in which the reader was already invested, in which the audience is already invested, because they know we watch we watch Ram Leela year after year, knowing what the story is, yet we watch it because we are invested in it. Similarly, with the Mahabharata, we hear these stories again and again because we are invested in it. And I felt that this common investment with me with which we share as a nation would make it interesting for me to engage with mythology. That was the reason why I looked at mythology. And when I started my journey with the first novel, the Counteyas, uh, um, it was it became more and more involving. I just grew, went deeper into it, and I found that I could converse with people with whom I had nothing in common at all otherwise, but we could have a very good conversation when we started discussing these stories. And eventually, that is what a writer is looking for, a conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing it with us. So, my next question is, how does one find inspiration to write when there is so much negativity around?
Yes.
Yeah, that is true because I think that would be too encouraging for all of us. And coming, especially coming from you, that would be a motivation for all of us. Even I can think also in future that not just like you, but yes, I could write something, an article or something like that. So, how does one find inspiration to write when there is so much negativity around us?
It's very simple. It's a good question that you've asked, but the answer is actually very simple. It just struck me that, no matter what was happening in my life, at any stage, whether the minute I started reading, I was reading. This is the magic of the story world. That that there are so many stories that exist, and storytelling itself is so marvelous, reading itself is such a marvelous activity that it people think of it as an escape, which it is. So if there was negativity at any point, in your life, you read a funny book, or if you were depressed, you enjoyed a humorous writer, or you read a piece of poetry which was philosophical, or you read a bit of detective fiction to get your mind off something else and engage. The point is that the story world itself is a marvelous place, and if you are dealing with negativity, then one of the best escapes is to get into the story world rather than getting into any other addiction or any other relief form of relief. Reading, I have always felt, has helped me deal with negativity all through my life. Therefore, writing, which is a natural is a natural sort of outcome of reading, um, was very easy. I go to writing because it's the way I deal with negativity.
Okay, I think that is the motivating part for me. And if I'll feel like sad or negative about anything else, then I'll start
Yeah,
reading because these days, yeah, also when there was a first lockdown in 2020, that was too negative for all of us. I read one or two novels in
yeah.
that time. And I can relate your words with that. That is completely true. If one is like facing a negativity around them, they should start reading. It will bring up positive vibes inside you and your soul will get like very much relief after reading something. That's
That's right.
completely I can relate. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I can
see, the
relate.
thing is with characters, characters that live in novels are so it's easy to connect with them, easy to see their conflict, easy to understand. It makes it a little more, your own conflict and your own situation becomes understandable. And that is the first step to conquering any kind of negativity, is to try and understand why it is there. So reading does offer solutions.
Of course, it will give you time to just interrogate yourself or just to like deep dive yourself into
Yeah,
yourself only so that you can
yeah,
just find out the points what is exactly bringing the negativity in you and what exactly you can do to just overcome that.
yeah.
That's completely, yeah, that is completely motivation. So Madhvi, going ahead, we have talked about Drishadvati, one of my favorite character as well, but I just wanted to know out of curiosity as well because I just wanted to know right now. So how did you think of the name Bride of the Forest? Because I think I
Uh,
forgot to ask this.
yeah, Bride of the Forest. if you've read the book, then you know how the book ends, the choice that Drishadvati makes and how she takes agency in her life. That is, why she chooses to become, perhaps, what the, as the title says, the bride of the forest. So I could have called the book Yayati's Daughter, which in fact was the original name which I was thinking of. But that did not, that, as someone rightly pointed out, you know this makes her, this doesn't give her the kind of space that she needs. But she needs to stand in her own light. The name has to be something which makes people ask, who is the bride of the forest? Why does she become the bride of the forest? And perhaps then they will pick up the book. So bride of the forest seemed a fitting title.
Good to hear that, because the title itself create the curiosity around us, like what's inside
The,
it,
yeah,
why we are calling it Bride of the Forest. If we know
yeah,
the story, not exactly, but somewhere, if we know some points, then why? Yeah,
yeah.
got it. So, Madhvi, thank you so much for joining us today. Before we would just go and wrap up this session, I just wanted to ask you if you would like to share some of the words of encouragement for our budding women writers, or those women who are struggling to take the big step to follow their passion.
uh, just one second. Yeah, yeah. You see, the thing is that, words of encouragement, I mean, I don't know what to say other than to say that if it is your passion, if it is a burning passion, only then please write. Yes, you can dabble, you can write the one story to please yourself, and you will, no doubt, if you have a skill with words, you will write a good story, or you've had an experience which is interesting, you will write a good story. But one story does not make you a writer. For to be a writer, you have to develop a habit of writing, which it is literally like riyaz, which you do if you want to study music or become a singer, or a musician or whatever. The thing is that you have to write practically every single day. Write one para, write one page, write 500 words, write 1,000 words, depending on how much time you can manage, but write. It is the writing habit which makes you a writer. And the thing to remember is that it is many stories inside you. The eye to see these stories, or to be able to see the seed of a story, to develop it further, is another thing which is a form of practice which you have to do. Don't do it if you're looking for money or fame, because these are incidental. They may come, they may not come, but do it for the craft itself. Do it for the joy of writing itself, the fun of playing with words, the challenge of, putting out these thoughts and pushing your thinking to its limits. Try and do it for that reason. And of course, the most important suggestion which I have for a writer is read other writers. Please understand that we are all operating within the same universe, and ideas, you understand how the craft of writing works when you read a whole range of writers. So read extensively, write daily. And um, also, one more thing, don't take yourself terribly seriously. Don't do that. Understand that there will be failures, there will be rejections, learn to deal with it, and just do what you want to do.
You know what? That was a well said, Madhvi, and thank you so much. And I highly appreciate that you are the woman who not just only motivates, but who said the bitter truth as well. And you don't keep someone in a shadow. That's the thing which I like you about the most. So thank you so much once again, Madhvi, for taking time out your schedule for this lovely session and inspiring so many of us here today. Even I think inspire me as well. Thank you so much once again from the bottom of my heart. And thank you to all those who have turned in to watch this session, and Also, please keep checking the space for our next book reading session and other interesting things. Thank you so much once again, everyone. Take care of yourself and have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank